If you want to see a beautifully shot and somewhat lazily edited movie about a couple trapped in a time loop, a sci-fi thriller with shoddy world building that is saved by great acting, and an ending that feels like the writer just gave up and ran away from his paper, Landline, now showing on Prime Video, is the movie for you. Landline is directed and written by Dele Doherty and comes fully loaded with beautiful color grading, great music, and very nice cinematography. The story can best be described as science fiction with elements of the paranormal, as it is centered around the couple caught in a time loop. The wife always ends up dying, only for the time to rewind until a few minutes before her death, while her husband frantically tries to prevent the seemingly inevitable from happening. Note that once the time rewinds, the woman no longer has any memory of the previous time where she was killed. They did try to do too much by having her dream of herself dead multiple times at the very beginning, but ended up going nowhere with it. The film is quite sparse on casting, and you actually only see three people take part in the shenanigans. We have Gabriel Afolayan, who I recall from Seven Doors and Clarence Peters' Inside Life, which I consider a great show. I just never actually reviewed it because I couldn't finish it. I was very busy with work at the time, but now the time is gone from me. And we also have Zainab Balogun, a very, very fine girl who I had never heard of before, never seen before. I get the idea she's popular though, so good for her because I really did like her performance in the end. There is also a third character that we will get to later. Every time Shalewa dies, the phone rings for her husband who is out of town, and someone on the other end tells him something like, tell her to hide in the closet because she's about to die or whatever. And he does so only to have it fail time and time again, like you'd expect in these time loop movies, where a character tries to change the outcome, like in Groundhog Day, Looper, and I forget the name of one I saw recently on Netflix, where it turns out that the guy was his own killer, lover, father. There was a whole transgender thing going on there, and the whole complication nearly broke my brain, but I absolutely loved it. But this one isn't really like that. It's more one track with little complications but many repetitions. Well, to be honest, the one on Netflix was more about time travel, but still to the same times. Now, so the default scenario for the killing in this movie is this. The couple are always on the phone at a certain time. Kola is not home. He has been in a military safe house for months. Just go with it. I will explain later. Then the doorbell rings, and as soon as heavily pregnant Shalewa waddles up to the door and opens the door, a masked gunman uses his gun to create the kind of big full stop that comes with a lot of blood on her forehead. Early on, when this happened, the husband had just finished talking with her on the phone with a promise to call her back because she wanted him to keep her awake on the phone or to be with her on the phone until she fell asleep. And this particular scene raised some questions for me because he told her something like, let me fix something, I'll call you back." And then he just goes to the bed to sleep. So, what was he fixing? His circadian rhythm? Did he have somewhere in particular that he really needed to be in his dream by 10 past 11? I didn't get that part. I must say, the editing at the beginning was quite hard to follow. I get the impression that Shalewa had died 2 or 3 times before her husband clocked that. I said clocked. See what I did there? Before her husband clocked that he was in the time loop. Now, after multiple rewatches, I figured the filmmakers were just trying to show us the status quo and that he doesn't actually become aware of the loop until an external party, a caller, calls him to inform him of it. Now, after that call, he is now sort of outside the loop, condemned to hear his wife die multiple times over the phone. But unfortunately, the editing to get to this point was not very inspired. So unless you sit down and think about it hard, instead of it to be thinking about how the story is going, I'm thinking about the editing, which is silly. Now, I must say, credit where credit is due. I complain a lot about the aversion of our filmmakers to the concept of Chekhov's gun. Like, this is where, like I've explained many times before, where they introduce something early in the movie that you think will play out later, but then they just simply forget about it, and then it just turns out to be a waste of our time. Or where they just introduce something at the end of a movie that was never even hinted at early on in the beginning. But that's not what happens to this movie. For one, the wife Shalewa carefully implanted the idea and location of sleeping pills very early in the movie, which would later turn out to be an important plot point towards the end. So I'm glad that they took their time to incorporate that device into the movie and at least do it well. They also do the same thing for tea and coffee, but this one was a bit off for me because I don't really know why this woman is offering someone who just stepped into her house at 11 p.m. tea or coffee. Is she extending her pregnancy craving to everybody that she meets? This is why I thought the movie was a bit too westernized at some points. There was really no local flavor in this time loop movie. It was just like anything that maybe a lower budget of what you would have seen from abroad. Now, as a Nigerian, nobody has ever offered me tea or coffee when visiting. So I really raised my brows at how wrong it sounded, long before I actually saw it come full circle. By the end, you know why the writers used that device specifically, but I felt like it was just a bit of lazy writing to solve a simple problem. The movie starts out with a lot of banal conversation between the couple over the phone, and at some point, the woman was trying to put on the AC, and there was a lot of back and forth about when last he changed the battery on the remote. And it took so long, that's this conversation, that I thought something was being set up that would pay off later. But nope, the writers were just professionally wasting my time and extending the runtime of this thing. I mean, who remembers when they changed the battery on their AC remote? It's like asking a man when he changed his boxers last. Like, whoever remembers such an unnecessary and distant event. Now, the movie had some tension for me. Actually, quite a lot at some places. I recall as I was watching it, I was eating my world famous patty jollof rice, and sometimes I'll just slow down my chewing just to be looking attentively at the screen because I was afraid of what would happen next. So I liked it very much in that respect. I also really liked the chemistry between the two main characters. This Zainab Balogun is so damn fine. She is exceedingly pleasant to look at. I've never seen her before, but she also happens to remind me very strongly of uh, Jolade, aka Joes, the bestie of my President for Life, FK, from the I Said What I Said podcast. I don't know if you can see it, but it was very glaring. And by the way, if you don't know my president, she was the one that was organizing ambulances and all that stuff during the NSAS protest in October 2020. My hero for life, like, just really. Sergeant Kola Shalewa's husband is confined to a military safe house throughout this movie. He has been there for about 2 months while his wife is home alone and pregnant, so he's not available to save her from a killer. The problem with this very important premise is that it is mostly gibberish, as is most of the world building in this movie. In fact, when Shalewa asks her husband,
Like, what's so difficult that you can't explain to the mother of your unborn child why you can't come home? Okay, you can talk now.
on the second rewatch, I nearly shouted, he cannot explain it because neither he nor the writers know. What the hell is happening? When I asked about this movie on my YouTube channel, a comment from Rita Karina 1239, where she said that she hates time loop movies because she sees them as a sort of mental illness, suddenly made sense to me while I was in the shower because it seemed like, based on the world building for this movie, maybe this whole thing is just a mental illness in the guy's mind because it was just that bad. Surely the writers did not expect sensible thinking human beings to just buy this thing about the protest and a safe house. The explanation given is so boring. So apparently, a massacre happened in the country, and this led to some sort of to a state, an actual state of emergency across the nation. Sergeant Kola is aware about maybe the army's complicity in the massacre, so the army decided to hide him in a safe house to keep him from being compromised, whatever the hell that means. They hide him in the safe house while somehow still leaving his heavily pregnant wife free in their palatial apartment. And by the way, this guy is supposed to be a sergeant in the army, but his house looks like he's the bank CEO or a ritualist or a drug dealer or something. Because how does an army sergeant who earns about 70K even begin to look for a house in this area? Like, you see that vanity table? Just look at this bedroom. You can't even afford stuff like this as a deputy manager in a bank. So what? The bros just lives like the top 1% and he's still just a sergeant. So will he then own a private jet by the time he's captain? It could also be that the wife is the more successful one. Maybe she's a big banker or whatever. But that is never shown. And it's pretty important because he's a sergeant that lives in a luxury house. If his wife is the one that is making it, that has made it possible for them to afford it, then it should definitely have been shown somewhere in the story, but nothing is ever mentioned about her work or her occupation, not even in pictures. So I'll just go with him. I thank God the wife didn't have to go to the car park, because we may even see that they also own a Rolls Royce. Like I was saying before, I was really rudely interrupted by myself. If the army cannot let him be compromised because of some important information that he has on some massacre or some protest, his wife certainly can be used to get to him. And yet, they didn't leave any 24-hour armed guard with her. So, why aren't they both in the safe house? What exactly is safe in this entire situation? It was so silly that the lack of detail in this premise was in danger of unraveling the whole thing for me, if not for the acceptable production quality of the whole thing. There was even another added layer of rubbish where they say he's safeguarding some secret documents or something. They don't, which actually they didn't. They don't even. Say they don't have safe in the army headquarters or what? Why are you keeping a secret? Why are you keeping a document in a safe house? You don't have camera, phone, and army Google Drive. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, while he's in the safe house, his father even calls him. So somehow people still have access to his number. And but do you know how he picked his father's call? So he was on his phone with his wife. His wife was weeping on the phone about their previously late child and hoping that this new pregnancy would not be like the last one or something. I don't know. There was some stuff about it. And he is consoling her and just abruptly cut the call to pick his father's call. And not because he had any particular matter to discuss with the father. It was just a random, unnecessary conversation. So why would you cut your grieving pregnant wife's call to pick your father's call without even saying goodbye? Like your wife is crying, and is this guy clinically insane or what? So it's things like this that leads me to the conclusion at the end of this video. Also, for some reason, he has his father's pictures in this safe house right above his wife's, which is weird as hell. You have to run into a safe house, and in your rush to pick things up, you pick your wife's photo and then your father's photo. You have like two phones. Why do you have a physical photo of your father, of your very much alive father in front of you when there was WhatsApp? I also don't get why somebody with bad intent can't just track his phone or his family's phone to figure out where they are hiding Kola. Did the writers not know this? During this call, his father says that he has just been informed that Kola had not been home for 2 months. So how is he just knowing that his son hasn't been home, whereas his son has been hiding with his photo? I don't. During the call again, comes the most sensible line in this movie, which would have made the entire movie unnecessary if Kola had been able to answer it correctly.
Do you think that whatever they are protecting you for might also affect your wife?
I mean, sometimes during the time loops, Kola would call for his boss to send a policeman, who is the third character in this movie, to the house before the killer arrives. And it always just happens instantly, as though the policeman was just waiting outside the door. I didn't really get like what was up with that. He calls the boss and then immediately calls his wife, and while he's on the phone with his wife, barely 1 minute in, and the policeman just there at the door. And like, wait, was he just standing at the door or what? And then when he enters, he just sits for about 2 minutes and then leaves. I don't get it. You are here to guide someone. Where are you going to? Is there some important markets that you need to sell by 12 a.m.? Why would he come and then just leave? Also, shout out to the policeman played by Buchi Franklin, who somehow managed to look perfectly dangerous despite his skinniness while still in police uniform. I really liked his body language. It was very shifty and very dangerous looking, dangerous feeling. He also, at the beginning, he did look quite off to me as a police officer until I realized later that it was because he had beards, which, as you may not know, is not allowed in the police force. So just think about it carefully. Have any of the policemen you've paid bribes to recently had beard? This could probably have been incorporated into the story to make the woman suspicious of him or something earlier on. But nope, I think they just missed that part, or I don't know. So yeah, let me just end the world building around here. It's in summary, it's just atrocious. Aside effectively using the Chekhov's gun device, the story of the world is quite juvenile. It's childish, honestly. It's bad. And it's sad because for me, it was a very important part of the whole thing. Sometimes the dialogue made me wince. For instance, while he was trying to get her to hide from her killer during the third loop, I think, she says,
Kola is not the same as the last time. What if the police don't get here on time?
even though he had not told her about the loop yet. So what last time was he talking about? That's how I know maybe things were moved around in editing and maybe they missed this statement. I was not even really listening for it. As soon as he just said it, my mind just went, when? What last time? And I had to rewind to confirm that he had not actually explained the loop to her yet. Also, at some point during one of the loops, she severely injures the killer. And here she says,
It's okay if I'm nervous.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I actually chuckled. What do you mean it's okay if I'm nervous? You were about to die and your husband was losing his mind. Like, what do you think this is? A Gen Z group therapy Twitter space? It's okay if I'm nervous. It's like you are not a very big fan of staying alive long enough to see your born child. This is not the kind of thing you say when you just barely made it out of the grave. It's okay to be nervous. You must be insane, man. I nearly expected her to also say love and light. It's okay to be nervous, clown. All in all, I found the movie engaging, if not super interesting. I particularly liked the sequence where Kola is talking on the phone, but the filmmakers visualized him in the actual living room in military fatigue, talking beside his wife to guide her with some, military precision. I like it a lot because I read a lot of sci-fi, which is basically all I actually read. I found the time loop concept shoddily executed. There was, I think, even a bit of magic involved because the landline, the phone where the movie gets its name from, is the phone that the caller calls in on. Yeah, I was correct. What the hell was I doing? The phone is not connected to power, which is not explained at all. It's not connected to anything. And it almost makes me agree with Rita Karina 1239 that this guy probably has a mental illness that the writers don't know about, and all this stuff is just happening in his head. I don't know, maybe from isolation of being in a safe house. The very ending also seemed designed to confuse rather than intrigue. You know those Hollywood things where at the end of the movie it turns out that, oh, you are still trapped in the loop or in the haunted house but you did not know. Um, Caller says something like, "I have to go. I need to save someone," and maybe you get the idea that he is the original caller who is calling himself back in time, trapped somewhere in the time loop or whatever. But there was no logical jump to that. He finishes the call and says, "I have to save someone." When, as far as he's concerned, he has just finally saved his wife after so many failed loops. So, who do you want to go and save? You know what? This is not science fiction. We're just watching mental illness on food, to be honest. Maybe this movie would have been better if, it was just shown as we are just walking this guy through his mental illness, just like in Shutter Island, yes. And at the very end of it, the very last thing we see is where the clock begins to go back in time. It makes no sense. It makes no sense at all. Anyway, thank you, Rita, for that idea. I actually did not agree with that at the beginning, but I now saw reasons. The weird thing is, this is one of maybe the only times where I think the movie should have been longer. So the movie takes place over 1 hour, 20 minutes, and there were a lot of ideas that I can't even discuss in these reviews that seemed that wanted to be shoved into it. And it's possible that maybe it would have done well with maybe adding 10, 15 minutes to the runtime. So this kind of movie for 1 hour, 20 minutes, I don't know. I don't think it was the right decision. They should have added some things to just give it a bit more flesh. Explained some things just a little more, even if they want to quote it with intrigue, just a little more. My final recommendation for the movie is that I like it and you should definitely watch it. Despite all I said, I think it was quite ambitious and perfectly entertaining. I'll give it maybe 3/5 for effort, maybe not for execution, which is sad since the movie would have been relatively cheap to make with just like 3 actors and 1 location, and all they had to do was just write it better so that it does not feel like and crumble like a house of cards. Anyway, congratulations to Dele Doherty and the team. I think it was a good attempt. Hopefully better next time. All right then. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you on the next one.